But of course, you will see big disruptions. Let's say in a transport system, it might just taxis, Ubers, right? Truck drivers, long distance truck drivers, trains, all this kind of stuff. I can imagine to be in the near future to completely change.
On the Experts Connect podcast, we have thought provoking conversations with top performing experts on topics that matter to you. With Experts Connect, you'll uncover fascinating facts and gain the necessary skills you'll need to improve all aspects of your life. Can you provide us with examples of how AI is disrupting and transforming major industries?
Yeah, sure. I think you see it very broadly. A positive example is in any of from our customers. We have a lot of mid-sized customers here, and um, they catching up, and it's not for replacing people, but more like to make it more stable, to free up their persons to do other stuff which machine could not do. And this is often a misconception. I remember that we had a talk actually from what was Microsoft, I think, or Google at Philips, and we had a lot of medical doctors there, right? And there was a question was about at some point, will they provide algorithms to replace doctors? And they're constantly saying, no, 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 of course not, it's just for aiding. And of course, they mostly said it for political reason because you don't want to have the doctors lobby against you. But the truth is in there as well because we humans are very capable of doing a lot of stuff. And we notice that, I mean, Elon Musk, they built a almost fully automated construction site, and I think it was 80% automated or something. And they noticed it's not working. The human is so much more versatile in some parts, so they had to tune it down. So it's more about freeing your employees at some point to give them tasks where they can shine as a human, right? But of course, you will see big disruptions. Let's say in a transport system, it might just taxis, Ubers, right? Truck drivers, long distance truck drivers, trains, all this kind of stuff. I can imagine to be in a near future to completely changed here. Especially when, of course, a taxi might be a bit more difficult, but a train, for example, it's on a track. How long do we need a train? How it's called? Train chef and train driver, right? Also trucks. I mean, they already started to have these trucks running through at least this long distance road about through United States or Australia, where it's just straight, right? I mean, you can't made so many mistakes here. So that's a huge thing. But yeah, as I said, medicine, of course, but there's more like a plus side because I mean, at least in Germany where I live, we need doctors. So if you're a doctor, you don't know, you're unemployed, just come to Germany. We definitely need doctors here. We have not enough. At least, I mean, of course, in Berlin, don't go to Berlin. They have enough, but at least on the countryside they don't. But the idea is here, of course, you can have algorithms which aid a doctor and help him to quicker assess a disease or something, or more precise, etc., and just give the benefit of all this. What I said before, the knowledge about previous cases. A new doctor doesn't have that, for example, right? So give him a machine aside, you say like, hey, I have seen 1 million of those cases in my database, so I can tell you most likely it's this disease, and now human do your own research, right? So so it's more an aid. But again, a lot of things will change. I just read a story about call centers. I didn't thought of them actually, but call centers was this revolutionizing the natural language processing here with much better language bots, etc. At some point in a couple next years, most likely we'll not see any humans or much less humans in call centers and just bots here. So there's a lot of the intellectual property I just mentioned before, right? I mean, Philips had the tactic at some. I'm allowed to say that some companies have the tactic to to encircle rival companies, for example, right? So you have an idea and say like, oh, this is interesting. So guys, look around to look around the topics which we can find here. They encircle them with patents, so they have their device, but they actually can't develop the right device any further. And as I said beforehand, again, it's just knowledge put together and searching well and this kind of stuff. I mean, algorithms can do that, I think, quite well in the future. So just like intellectual property, all this kind of stuff, this might change drastically. Let's see. I'm, I'm curious as well, but you will see changes in all industries. One sooner, the other one later. Yeah.
Interesting. So machines could replace jobs. We're looking, let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's a reality we have to face. Yeah, but I mean, for maybe uplifting, I personally, okay, that's now it's becoming philosophical, but I think I see it as a chance. Of course, we have kind of a new industrial revolution, right? A lot of people will fall behind, to be honest, and most likely, I'm too old for that. Maybe I will be one of them, but hopefully my kids not. But the thing is that um, the chance will be that reducing of certain types of labor, there might be a chance, and there might be the idea of, okay, now we human have a certain quality which a machine cannot have. And
Yeah.
if we can bring that quality into society to enrich society, and it's not about the amount of time you spend at work, but more about what type of human are you and what can you bring to the society and lift up the society, and to interchange that, because maybe classic labor can be done more and more by machines. But again, we have to tackle this because it also can go wrong. I mean, it's not all. This would be the ideal version, but let's see again here. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and let's talk a bit about autonomous driving. So there is this old lady and young lady dilemma. Can you talk about it, please?
Yeah, sure. That one, yeah, because I have that one. That question actually comes up at every dinner party, which is not happening at the moment, but back in the days, yeah. And the thing is, so there are some misconceptions, and also the first thing I will say, it's called dilemma, right?
Yeah.
A dilemma is a Greek word for a situation where there is no positive outcome. And that is a problem. So you ask something where there is no positive outcome. So I cannot answer in a positive way, more or less, right? That first of all. But I have, of course, ways to answer positively, because a machine, right, can just, I mean, most likely will not come into that situation. Because why does it happen? As a good driver, you should drive well aware. You should see the situation. You should not drive too fast. You should see that maybe the road is a bit more slippery, so you should even drive slower than it should be, etc. All this kind of stuff. A machine, if the machine is well done, will not do the mistakes of driving a bit too fast, be a bit dozed off, like just lighting your cigarette or watching to your phone. It will not do that. So the chances of the machine coming into that situation where they have suddenly a dilemma and saying there is no positive outcome is much less likely to happen. On the other hand, people always think like, oh yeah, it's programmed in. So what do you program in? Do you program to kill the old lady or the hot young chick? I altered that a bit, but yeah. But the thing is, it's not. The point is, AI is not programmed, right? So it's not that you do that, but it learns from experience, the same as we humans do, right? So the Tesla, for example, what do? They just record data and data. Every drive you drive with your Tesla is recorded. I think at the time it's not every recording is analyzed, only like critical situation, for example. So, but it's learned at least from the past, and especially now from actual real life situations, and they're driving much more than we can ever drive. So we have our set of knowledge and experience, and in this situation, we as a human, we think like, oh, wait a second, okay, this is a grandma and she has this societal impact, and this was a young lady. You will not do that. You will act in that moment, and you will act with a gut feeling, you act with instincts, and you will act with knowledge of stuff you've seen before. Maybe your gut knows, if I brake too hard, my car will turn, and maybe I will die. And most likely you will do the reaction which will save you, not the person in front of you. You don't want to harm yourself. So most likely you will do something. And that's exactly the same thing the algorithm will do. It will do something from previous experience, but most likely will do it much better. It will just break earlier and break more safer, etc. Um, so the thing is, if you just look at the statistics, I will share my screen again. Okay, the thing is, this is a Tesla vehicle safety report. So every quarter they bring out the accident data, right? And so we just have to look at the data. I just looked at it recently. So yeah, exactly. So here you get 3.4 million. You got 4.5, 4.5. I don't know, something. It's always around a bit more than 4, right? 4 million accidents per 4 million, sorry, 4 million driven miles per accident. And then you can compare that with um, down here the total amount total amount of miles driven by every human in the United States um, per accident, which is much lower, of course, right? And then, of course, you could say, yeah, I mean, a Tesla driver drives maybe a bit more carefully because his car is more, I don't know, more expensive, etc. But generally, the numbers show you that it's not only like double the amount; it's just like huge, like much greater factor, which the machine is already better than a human, and that is a thing that we tend to forget, right? Or that what we want to achieve. We always think like, okay, the machine, the AI has to be perfect. It's not allowed to make any mistakes. And this is a wrong thinking or the wrong thought process because the gold standard is our human capability. So if an autonomous car can drive as good as us humans, which is definitely can do it already, right? Then it's already as good as we humans, right? Of course, you can think like, yeah, I personally will never do make an accident, but come on, I mean, we always nobody said like today I'm going to make an accident, right? That is not happening. So and that's the point. So you have to come down from the thing like it has to be perfect. It just has to be better than us humans, and then we're already on the a good path. And we can see that with autonomous driving, the machine is already a better driver than we are. We just have to accept it. Yeah, that's maybe for that dilemma. So yeah.
Yes. Do you think that we're gonna drive autonomously soon?
Yeah, to be honest, you have a lot of different variation of people talking about this, and just
Mhm.
my personal opinion. Don't bet money on this, but I would say yes. And the reason is, first of all, technical. We are very close, as I just showed you. We are already the accident rate is much lower, but I personally think it will. Or the way it will happen is over insurance company, I think. So the insurance company will say, hey, if you drive autonomous, your rate is half or something. So it will go over the pocket. And then a lot of people will decide, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I think you just have to get adapted to the fact of driving autonomous for a while. So the first few times, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. And after the 10th drive, you're like, okay, I'm maybe not going to die. And then after half a year, you will not recognize it. I am quite sure. And then you have to, another thing in the background, you have a strong lobby, um, because I think so. So you have the car manufacturers, right? Because they want to sell cars, and for them, it's really interesting. If such a new system comes on the market, they can say like it's really unsafe to drive without an autonomous car. So you have to scrape all old cars and have to buy our new ones with the newest safety standards, right? So for them, that means they will sell a lot of cars, meaning there's a lot of political push and lobby work from I don't know Mercedes Benz, Daimler, whatever. So the German company worldwide, but and that's what most likely why we'll see a change. And sort of because first of the money, and then of course the lobby work with that. And then, of course, in some point, it's difficult to argue saying you have less accidents, you have less people dying, yeah, but we still don't make it viable. We say like, no, 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 you're not allowed to drive autonomous. It will become more and more difficult at some point to argue against that.
Yes, I understand. And one of the things when I think about autonomous driving, I always wonder, do I give the car full control of driving, or
It's a point.
sometime am I able to drive myself? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, we don't know where it's going, but I mean, Tesla already is. I think the leasing cars they're collecting them already back because they want to create this fleet where you can rent a car, and for them it would be stupid to allow you to drive by yourself, right? Because that would mean the chance of an accident, destroying their property, costs for them, etc., is higher. So for them it would be nice to say like, no, 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 nobody's driving anymore. It's just a machine. But I can imagine, of course, in emergency situations, if something fails, that you still have to grab the wheel at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I personally think it's getting less and less. And to be honest, I'm happy with that because I don't want to see my kids driving home from a party late at night, a bit drunk, saying, oh, I can still drive. I'm the best driver ever, and they're dying. I mean, this happened so many times. I met a mother actually where that happened. She was devastated. I mean, her life was in yeah, it was kind of over, right? And so I'm happy. If I hope my sons never have to do any driver's license test because there's no need to, right? That would be great.
Interesting future, Jan.
Yeah, right. Let's see.
Yes. So, Jan, you've been working in the embedded systems industry. How do you connect that to AI?
Yeah, that's interesting point. So as I said at the beginning, right? So there has to be made a switch, and actually, in the 2019, Google created the first development board, and so it's becoming more and more the norm. Let's say, more and more people recognize that that's the way to go, and I think that comes because we now understand the base artificial intelligence way of program, etc., and the problems and how to solve those problems. We understand them much better, or the broad majority understand them better. So a couple of years back, people think, like, okay, how can I optimize this algorithm? How can I get better accuracy, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And now it's more like, okay, now it's the next step. So what can we do now? Now it's like, hey, okay, now the challenge is to bring it on an embedded system to make it in, variable for an industry use case. Have less power consumption, have I don't know, less latency. Don't send everything over the internet. We don't need bandwidth here and there, right? Autonomous systems which you can just place somewhere and make things smart as well, like retrofitting. This is an idea, right? With a partner who's just focusing on retrofitting here. Very interesting. So it's the next step. Let's say the first step is understand the problem, run that on your desktop, and the next step is, okay, make it small, make it lightweight, make it low power consumption, and put it on an industrial device to steer something, right? So this is definitely the connection between the two. Yeah.
Yeah. And edge technology is trending. So, can you tell us a bit about that and how do you use embedded AI on the edge?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so edge, for the listeners who don't know, edge device just means the device at the end where the data is collected. Your mobile phone is an edge device, this old one. And sensors can be edge devices if they're directly attached to an embedded system, right? And the idea would be that you calculate your results there where the data is created. Um, let's say a good example would be, yeah, I showed that on a later another interview, saying like you have a train and you want to see the if the doors are working well, or like do predictive maintenance on the door, right? You could measure the current in the doors, for example, and see like, oh, there's something changing, maybe the door is deteriorating. So what you could do is you could put like a sensor with a model which just analyzes the environment with temperature, etc., and the currents, etc., to predict the state of the door, right? And either send that then collectively at some point to a main PC on the train, or when they're coming to the depot, just sending like a kilobyte message out there and say like, by the way, this door is fine, or this door will break down in X days, and this reduces um, the need for bandwidth, right? You don't have to send massive amount of data, especially if you're looking for video analysis, right? I mean, if you would have to send a video stream upstream, analyze it, and then send something down to steer something, tremendous cost because you have to send over some carrier. You have to be connected to the internet at some point. So rural areas might be quite difficult. Um, yeah, and then also like latencies, right? I mean, you have to send something up. You have bottlenecks all the way and and the step of the way. So if you need very fast times, it's good to have everything combined in one system, especially with embedded devices. The RAM, the memory, is directly connected, shared with a CPU and maybe neural accelerators. So even there's no bottleneck between the memory and the computing device. So it can be extremely fast. And the only limiting factor is the amount of memory to put your model in, to put all your algorithms in, and of course calculation units. And if you have a very complex deep neural network, yeah, it can happen that it runs super slow. But now with more and more neural processors coming to the market, yeah, we see a huge change here. And there's a huge change. I said that latest on the embedded world. Back in 2019, we had, I don't know, a handful of distributors, right? There was Google and some others who do embedded devices specifically for AI. Of course, you have NVIDIA, but it's more like GPUs. But let's say like specific dedicated hardware for AI was like just a handful. And now we have, I think, over 100 vendors. So this is a new market people fighting about and seeing the potential here. It's not just another buzzword, another one offer. So the people say like, oh, wow, okay, now we have a standard. Now let's go to embedded word, and especially so a company. And I see that mid-sized companies taking that up as well. So there's a huge market to feed. Yeah.
Interesting. And now we're going to talk about what's happening in terms of AI development on a
Yeah.
global scale. So, does Europe have a chance against the US and China when it comes to AI development?
Yes, of course.
Tell us.
No, but um, yeah, it's difficult, of course. First of all, it's a kind of the budget, right? If you look at the money they put into startup companies, I think the United States had something like 15 billion US dollars. They push in AI startup companies. China has, I think, the half of that, 7 or 8 or something, and then Europe has, I think, 3 or 4 billion. So there's a steep decline. But the thing is, that's just one thing, right? And also the question is always who's inventing and who's using. It sounds stupid, but for example, um, just a small difference, right? I'm an electric engineer. I'm not a computer scientist, so um, I'm not inventing the latest news deep learning networks, right? A new architecture. It's like, okay, this is the latest news and latest shit, but I just use that. So I'm like a worker who's get a hammer, like, okay, this how do you use it? Nail, I can do that perfectly. So it depends. So United States, for example, they come up with a lot of novel algorithms, etc. But of course, we can adapt and we can just also use them. Maybe always a bit behind, of course. That's a point, but I see a lot of good use and really stable algorithms also coming from at least Germany. And one of the top translation websites, DeepL, is coming from Cologne in Germany. I love it. And there are other algorithms. If you look at autonomous driving algorithms, for example, we talked about that. If you look at that from for Mercedes-Benz, VW, etc., they're just doing a great job. Of course, they started much later. So like at the beginning, like, this is all a joke, right? Now they know it's like, oh my goodness, this is not a joke, but they just post a lot of money into it. They have top engineers, and so the quality of the algorithms is really good. And also, actually, the research as well. So if you look at research papers, it looks actually a bit different. So I think China is still there, the top, how to say, publisher. Let's say that the most
Yeah.
papers, peer-reviewed papers coming from China, but the quality is actually much better in Europe. So that's a really nice. Was a really nice site. I can try to find it, send it to you to link it in the video, where they analyze actually the amount, but also the quality in detail for each country. And here actually Europe would be taking actually second place before United States. So United States is publishing less than Europe, and quality-wise, I'm not ahead, but at least Europe is quality-wise better than China. So it's not all hope is gone. Of course, just by the manpower. I mean, China has millions of engineers, right? I mean, yes, and United States is a different mindset. They're like explorers from their core, right? So it's easy for them to start up. Yes, one after another, fail. Doesn't matter. Next one. And Europe, you're like more like, whoa, slow. Let's see what's happening. Is it good? Test it again. Test it. So we're a bit slower, yes, but that means also the end product. If Europe brings something to the market, or let's say Germany brings something to the market, it's good. So I don't see the hope completely gone. I think it's an equal race.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's see what happens. And can you tell me what are the challenges of AI in this era?
Yeah. So I would say f- so one big thing would be natural language processing. So I talked about that before. A lot of research is going in there, but it's very difficult because you have a combination of just a dictionary, words, but then also grammar on sentence structure, and very complex, very complex topic to get the yeah to get how to say it, put that in right order to get the context of it all, right? To get it together, to get a context of a sentence, the meaning of a sentence. That will be one of the challenging things. And here we see actually that quantum computing might play a huge role. So they started to use quantum computing for actually natural language processing, or they mix it up, and they're seeing very good results here. So I'm looking forward to see some quantum computing working on natural language processing and other problems on the way. I mean, another problem was for the insiders was the underrepresentation problem. Google just found out that the models um, work in training, but they're working not sometimes not that well in the real world, right? And we have seen those. I mean, they could go in detail here, but maybe not too. But the thing is, this is just a problem. And I remember that when the message first came out, it was like, oh my goodness, hold, what's happening? It's like artificial intelligence is not working, right? We just make failures. It's completely unstable. But I've seen the same thing a couple of years back when it was the adversarial hacks, meaning
Yeah.
that you want to identify a face, right? And then you put a pattern somewhere which says, this is a dog. And instead of a face, I would say, it's a dog. Even it's like, what? When this is called adversarial hack. And I remember back at the day, people were like, oh, it's over. You can't use AI. If AI is so easily tricked, no chance. But what that meant is actually at that point is people say, okay, it's not flawless. So we have to further work on that. So they made it more stable. They came up with solutions to against adversarials, not completely, but they're working on that. So the same thing will happen now with the underrepresentation. So people say like, okay, it's not perfect, and they will come. I would just say, the Google guys, hopefully will come up with a solution, and we will of course help on that topic as well. But yeah, so it will just make it more robust. So even if there's always a challenge, always negative news about AI, that I always see that as a positive sign for more stable and long-lasting AI solution. Yeah.
Very good. And should there be higher standards with respect to transparency, privacy, fairness, and accountability with respect to the public use of AI?
Yeah. Yeah, there is. I mean, maybe you heard it. There was actually Google. They fired actually um, um, their top AI ethic persons, right? And there was a controversy about that because there was actually about the natural language processing. Again, I'm talking a lot about that, while not even being in the field that much. But the idea here was there was several points. First of all, what we have to think about is a carbon footprint. So they figured out that, or they pointed out that training huge neural network, especially in natural language processing, takes a lot of energy. And when I say a lot, it's a lot. Again, here I'll send you a link. It's multiple times of what you have like for a round trip with a airplane in the United States. And that's just for one time training from scratch. And during a research phase, you have to train it multiple times. So huge carbon footprint. But also, I mean, the amount of money that goes in there, right? So it's of course not equal, right? I mean, democratization of the AI was the first step actually what brought us to today. So the good thing is there was Azure, there's AWS, so meaning in the days before, we were not be able to really make any or train a model really significantly because we just didn't have the computation power. You would have to buy like for $10,000, you had to buy a workstation or something. So you wouldn't probably do that, right? Nowadays we have AWS, we have Azure. We just rent for a couple of hours a high-powered machine. So this was a democratization of the whole process. But the next step here is that, like the real sophisticated models, right, for the next era of AI, they need a lot of money. I think let's say I think the latest transformer model was like deep learning, searching, heuristic. I think it was about 3 or 4 million euros. I might be off here a bit, but please check that. But a huge amount of money just to train it, right? And so, of course, democratization. Who's participating here, right? Who's owning those algorithms? And of course, it's the big tech companies, right? It's Microsoft, it's Google, it's Amazon, it's Facebook. And to be honest, and that was also the point here, right? From this ethic researchers, and there were another point, of course, especially with also this natural language processing things, right? A huge amount of data has to be gathered, and the problem is you cannot. it's so much data you cannot just analyze it. You have to go for good faith, and it's like, oh, it should be it should be fine, right? And what they said, especially for natural language processing, it was a bit more finer points, were that yeah, you have to gather the data from the internet, but on the internet, we tend to speak differently. We are much more rough, right? We're just racist. We say things you would never say to somebody in the face, right? But people write that, and that will be then the standard to train on in a natural language processing network. So meaning, yeah, the whole network sees like a racist comment as just, yeah, that's just normal. That's how we speak, right? But also, and of course, bias to United States and English, like or for English speaking countries, because let's say, I don't know, Portugal or so is maybe not that represented with just written text as United States. So also here, bias towards the country, bias towards also making the language blend, right? That was another point. That if you just use one language and make a huge models trying out the language with representing us in Google and elsewhere, so suddenly language becomes not versatile anymore. And there was some other issues here, but the point is, of course, people think of that and people know that problem, and there are many AI principles there. Beijing principle, there Montreal, G20, OECD, um, Asilomar AI principles. So a lot of, I mean, probably Germany has, of course, their own principles. I think the probably my own city has a AI principles. I don't know. So everybody comes up with the principles. I think we have to do something about this, and it's mostly about, okay, global regulation, right? Who's we can't do this on our own. We have to do it in a bigger picture, and we have to have transparency. So how is the algorithm actually working? Is it working? It's like okay, well, let's say what happens if something goes wrong, right? You have to figure out where does something go wrong. Can we recreate this error? Can we fix this error? So it's not just like the classic black box a lot of people talk about, which is actually mostly not the case anyhow. But you have to fix it, and then also who is responsible? That's also a question, because it's not the algorithm. The algorithm is just an algorithm. You can say, it's a machine. Sorry, no, it's a human. Human programmed that. So, and the problem is just like also a tip for the guys who are in development. If you code something, you are responsible for what is happening. So if your boss tells you, "Oh, I want my algorithm to be biased against, I don't know, women or something," if you do that because they go, "Oh, I'm pressured by my boss," you are responsible. It's not your boss. I mean, if you get that as a written email, maybe in court, I'm not a lawyer, don't. But just to say this, you're responsible, right? So, and the same thing is going with AI. So, who's responsible? So, if you write your code with the best intentions, and at the time, even if it's change over the time, and maybe in a year, people knows like, oh my goodness, that was the worst way to program. But at that time, you didn't know better. You're fine. But still, you have to adhere to the standard of your time and try the best you can, right? Um, and what's up? What democratization, etc. Yeah, but the main key point is also ban the AI arms race. Maybe that is the biggest thing, which all of those AI principles have in common, saying we don't want to have an AI arms race. But yeah, reality. I mean, look to Hong Kong, look to either Syria. They are autonomous weapons already. I don't know. It's a box of Pandora. It's really hard to get that closed, and I know there's a lot of good efforts and a lot good of intentions, but yeah, I hope they come through, and yeah, I hope it will not end catastrophically. So the idea is just yeah, to the listeners, get on the train and help to push it in the right direction. That would be
Exactly, that's all we can do.
yeah.
And final question, Jan, what are your predictions on how AI will change the world in 2050?
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. Again, I have to repeat myself from the embedded worlds panel, because a similar question was asked, and the thing is that uh, I can't answer that because humans tend to think in linear terms, right? You think, okay, I know what happened yesterday, or I know what happened a month ago, um, but it's not a linear development, right? So actually, if you look at the development, as you saw on the timeline before, it's maybe not exponential, but at least some non-linear function at least, right? So it's really difficult to say. What I know is, yes, as I said, I think more general AI will be there. Very important, like understanding context, understanding context in time, in spatial domain, to put like a where things. Oh, this is a table, and there is something on the table, so maybe it's a reason why it's on the table, right? And this kind of stuff. But also direction in time and understanding here the context. And yeah, of course, and then combining that to get a more general AI. Of course, we were all working forward to the service roboter. I mean, who doesn't want to have one, right? But the point is, I don't want to say never, because a lot of people say, will that happen? Will the AI overturn the human race or something? And the point is, and this is actually from the Asilomar AI principles actually state that, and they say, prepare for everything, prepare for all possibilities. So it would be not good to say, I don't know, this will never happen, so we don't have to think about this. Think about worst case, prepare for the worst case, and hopefully it's not happening, right? So I will not say, the AI will never be more intelligent than humans. I will say, like, I don't know, just think of that. Think how would the world look like if the AI would took over? So, and how can we think of alternatives, right? So, um, yeah, exactly. So don't push it aside. Think open, think broadly, yeah, and just be part of the community. Maybe that's a good final sentence.
Yeah, I like it. Think open, think broadly, and be a part of the community. Thank you so much for sharing, Jan. I'm
It was
sure
lovely.
our audience has learned a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning, classic machine learning, and deep learning. Thank you so much for sharing.
I appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in on Experts Connect. Please head on over to teachsomebody.com and give us an applause. You may share your comments and ask your questions in the comment section. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as follow us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. You can also follow me on Instagram at Kadian Davis Owusu. Have a lovely rest of the week. Bye.